Where I Live, Connecticut. Chapter 7, Our Economy. Page 52, Jobs Then and Now. Colonists had to make almost everything they ate and used. Men, women, and children all had jobs to do. They had to grow their own food, but they also had to make things to sell and use. Men and boys tended to work outside. Women and girls worked in and around the home. Boys and girls went to school, but only boys were allowed to go to college. Colonial era, manufacturing jobs: blacksmith, weaver, cabinet maker, miller, cooper, shoemaker, seamstress. Service jobs: teacher, minister, servant, shopkeeper, innkeeper. Jobs then and now. Page 53. Indentures and slaves. Another kind of worker was an indentured worker. Men, women, and children agreed to work for 7 years. They worked to learn a trade. After that, they were free to do what they wanted. Some workers had no freedom. They were called slaves. They had been captured in their homeland of Africa. They were brought to America to work. They were considered property, not people. Sometimes Native Americans captured during war were enslaved. At the time of the American Revolution, Connecticut had more slaves than any other New England state. Ministers, merchants, and lawyers had slaves to work on their farms and in their homes. Slavery was outlawed in Connecticut in 1848. It was legal in other parts of the United States until 1865. Factory work. Many factories opened during the 19th century. Connecticut factories manufactured guns, clocks, hardware, bicycles, and more. They needed workers. They hired men, women, even children. Factory work could be dangerous. Work today, page 54. Work today. In the 21st century, people find many kinds of jobs in Connecticut. There are still farmers. There are still factory workers. There are also many office jobs. One of the main industries in Connecticut is insurance. Many adults work for insurance companies such as the Hartford, Aetna, and Travelers. Connecticut has jobs in healthcare and bioscience. Scientists and engineers live in our state. They research ways to improve the life and health of living things. Doctors and nurses work in our hospitals. There are major manufacturing companies in our state. Small business and small manufacturing companies are important too. Many people start their own businesses. Can you picture yourself working with digital media? Video production, software design, and television production might be jobs you'd like. The sports television network ESPN is based in Bristol. Many Connecticut residents have jobs making sure people enjoy their visit to our state. People work in hotels and at museums, amusement parks, and restaurants. Some major manufacturers in Connecticut. Company, major products, where they are located. United Technology makes aircraft engines, elevators, and escalators. They're located in Farmington. Electric Boat makes ships and submarines. They're in New London. Sikorsky Aircraft makes helicopters. They're in Stratford. Xerox makes copiers and office products, and they're in Norwalk. Stanley Black & Decker makes tools and hardware, and they're in New Britain. Connecticut invents, page 55. Connecticut invents. You could be an inventor. Learn how at the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office website, uspto.gov/kids. Have you ever had a good idea for something to make or build? Have you created something new that could help people? Look around you. Everything was invented by someone. Once you have an idea for an invention, you apply for a patent. A patent gives a person the right to be the only one to make the product he or she invented. Connecticut has always been a creative place. During the 19th century, more people in Connecticut were given patents than in any other state. Did you know? Mary Keyes of South Killingly may have been the first woman to be issued a U.S. patent. She got one in 1809 for a way to braid silk with straw to make bonnets. Today, Connecticut is still one of the top 10 states for receiving patents. Page 56. Sikorsky Helicopter, 1939. Igor Sikorsky wanted to build a helicopter. Unlike an airplane, a helicopter can fly straight upward. For years, he drew sketches of helicopter designs. In 1939, he built his first helicopter in Stratford. The helicopter flew a few feet off the ground. He kept working at it. He redesigned it 19 times. In 1940, the United States Army asked Sikorsky to build the R-4 Hoverfly helicopter. The Hoverfly was used to rescue people during World War II and the Korean War. The Wiffle Ball, 1953. Two Fairfield boys were playing ball in the yard. They were playing with a broomstick and a lightweight plastic golf ball. One boy's father, David Mullaney, had an idea for a lightweight baseball. He got some plastic parts through a friend. He and his son tested out several designs. This is called trial and error. They found one that was great for throwing at curve balls. A strikeout was called a whiff. They called their invention a wiffle ball. Ovation Guitar, 1967. Charlie Kaman worked with Igor Sikorsky building helicopters. He soon started his own company, Command Corporation, in Bloomfield. He tried using Sitka spruce wood for helicopter rotor blades, but they vibrated too much. He was a musician too, and this gave him an idea. Guitars need vibration to create sound. With the materials he used to build helicopters, he built a new kind of guitar. His invention, the Ovation Guitar, had a round back and an electric amplifier that would make it easier to hear. Musicians loved it. Page 57, Moving Across Connecticut. Moving across Connecticut. How do we get from place to place? How do products get from the maker to the customer? At first, people walked and carried their products. Travel by land was slow and difficult. People and goods also traveled by boat. Native Americans traveled by canoe on rivers and along the coast. Dutch traders arrived by sailing ship from across the Atlantic Ocean. The English built roads. By the American Revolution, more than 1,600 miles of turnpikes had been built in Connecticut. These roads were rough, rocky, and rutted. People traveled by horse-drawn carriages, wagons, and stagecoaches. Did you know? Bridges and ferries carry people and goods across a river. Connecticut has two historic river ferries. A ferry has run between Rocky Hill and Glastonbury since 1655. The Chester Hadlime Ferry started operating in 1769. At first, long poles were used to push the ferry across. The ferry now has an engine. It can carry passengers and 9 cars. People in Connecticut invented, made, and sold more and more products. Goods and supplies were too heavy to move by horse and wagon. The Farmington Canal was built in 1828. A canal is a man-made waterway. It connected New Haven to Massachusetts. The canal needed constant repairs. Use of the canal stopped in 1848. What are you wondering? Page 58. A new technology came to Connecticut in the 1830s, the railroad. Over time, more than 1,000 miles of tracks crisscrossed the state. People and goods could go farther more quickly. The Farmington Canal made way for a rail line. Water was still the best way to go long distances. Another new invention, steamships, carried passengers and goods from port to port. From there, the goods and passengers could take a train to their destination. To get around in the city, people hopped on horse-drawn streetcars and later the trolley. Trolleys were powered by electricity instead of horses. Albert A. Pope's Bicycle Company in Hartford helped make bicycles very popular in the late 1800s. People could travel quickly wherever they wanted to go, but they couldn't carry much. Albert Pope introduced his horseless carriage in 1896. It used an electric motor. The Locomobile Company made steam-powered cars in Bridgeport from 1900 to 1903. It then made gas-powered cars. Both companies went out of business by the 1920s. Page 59. In the 1920s, Hartford's Pratt & Whitney began to build airplane engines. Airports were built so that planes could land in Connecticut. Hartford's Brainerd Airport opened in 1921. Tweed New Haven Airport opened in 1929. Bradley International Airport is Connecticut's largest airport. The Army needed an air base to protect Connecticut's industries during World War II. Bradley's runways were disguised to look like tobacco fields. After the war, it became a commercial airport. Our first highways were built in the 1930s. Engineers are constantly redesigning our roadways. Creating better ways to move people and goods from place to place is important to Connecticut's economy. Whether traveling by bicycle, bus, car, or airplane, the more than 3 million people in our state depend on transportation to get them where they need to go. Learn more at whereilivect.org/transportation.